Michael Sengbusch. How are you? Thanks for being on. That's it. So people who don't know who you are, can you just give a quick intro? I'll just preface it by you're one of the smartest guys I know. So I love having you involved with Sure. I love having you on the show.
Yeah, well, I've enjoyed getting to know you over the last year or so. For quick background for everybody, we had a common friend.
Yes.
Who was actually one of my investors in one of my startups, and it happened to actually be a digital marketing startup. So that's interesting. That's why we had a lot to talk about. But my background has been as an engineer. I spent the first half of my career being a software developer and slowly got from building software to running software teams and engineering teams, moved a little bit more into product, and then got the entrepreneurial bug back in 2011. Left a very good, stable, long-term job right after my second son was born, because that was a smart idea to go join a very, very early stage startup. And we were doing early digital marketing technology. So this is back in the days where, Google marketing was just getting traction. Social media marketing was a brand new thing, very, very revolutionary. Nobody even knew what the medium was, let alone how to monetize it. We happened to be working very closely with Google, but also Facebook. We had early access to the Facebook marketing API, ads API, when it was first released. This is like 2011, 2012. So I was CTO of that company called Bright Whistle, based at ATDC down at Georgia Tech. And very quickly, we learned a lot about marketing technology and ad tech. And through a series of events, we started to have some healthcare customers. And digital marketing was kind of unheard of in a healthcare setting for hospital marketing. And we had some very progressive early adopter customers that were in health systems. And we pivoted the company to be marketing technology for health systems. Carved out a really nice niche there, and that's how I happened to get exposure to healthcare, which is a good skill if anybody wants to know about a very unique, odd industry. Understanding the lay of the land of healthcare was something that I continue to do now. My roles was with healthcare. So did that for several years, and then went and did another startup, which was also a digital marketing startup, and we can talk about this later, but we were doing a lot of the things that folks are doing now with AI, but really before the generative AI revolution came into place. And I think we were a little early for some of that stuff. I think if we had taken the same approach, recently that we did, 7 or 8 years ago, we would have been in a better spot. It was a classic example of maybe being a little too early before the technology had caught up, and we were doing a lot of things that were AI-like, but we didn't have the toolbox that's available now.
We put it there.
So, during that time, we spent a lot of time working with ad agencies who were doing either, search engine marketing, social media marketing. And so did that, and then got sucked back into healthcare over the last, 2 or 3 years.
We needed you.
Yeah, which has been great. So anyway, happy to talk more about.
Yeah, there's a podcast about your startups. We're mostly going to talk about AI today, but just to close the loop on Bright Whistle, did it start as an agency and then turned into a platform that then was successfully an exit?
Yeah, it was the vision was always to be a technology company, to be a product company. But you know how this is with a lot of early stage startups. Oftentimes you have to provide a service while you're building the technology. I mean, very rarely do you get enough funding where you can just go away for a year or two and build a product that's monetized and ready to go.
Right.
So what we were doing in the early stages, and we even did this all throughout the life of the company, was we offered a lot of services on top of the technology, which were essentially an outsourced digital ad agency. So if one of our customers needed help running ads, monitoring ads, building websites, we did all of that as well. And then we would layer our technology and our product to help us do that. So our customers would buy the product and they would buy our services. And oftentimes we would use our products to provide the service, but it was essentially an outsourced digital marketing agency that had a suite of products that we sold.
Yeah. What I love about your perspective, one, you're a Georgia Tech engineer, but you've been a product guy who really got into both the agency space, but like the software development. And so your perspective on what we're talking about today, AI, I'm very curious. So just starting very, very high level, like from your point of view, having played with all the technology, all the models, all the tools that are being layered on top. Like what is changing? What has changed for marketing with the advent of now AI? What's been disrupted? What's hype?
Yeah.
What's fact? What's fiction?
Yeah, I think there's kind of two sides of this coin where, and you and I were talking about this earlier, and I think this is just fascinating to see how both sides of this are going so fast. But on one side, it's how consumers and customers are engaging
Yeah.
with the website or how they're making buying decisions. I think we're seeing that change pretty quickly. That clearly has an impact on things like SEO, search engine marketing, Google search results, and kind of buying decisions. That's one side. The other side, from the agency side, which is, kind of a lot of what you and I have been talking about, is, how does an agency leverage AI tools and automation to make their lives easier, right? So how are you automating things, whether it's content creation, copywriting, ad monitoring, using AI internally to make things faster and more efficient? Both of those things are so tightly related because what you're automating or what you're using AI for as part of the agency is changing because of how users are engaging with things online, where it's less about keyword searching and it's more about, hey, maybe my first search was not through the browser, it was through like a chat GPT or through a Grok or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talk about that a lot, is the zero click world that we're living in, right? Because now the snippet comes up 70% of the time, less so for commercial intent, but very, like almost as, if it's informational, it's always coming up. And so one of the things that we coined in Sherrock was it's not just keywords anymore, it's conversational keywords. I start and I sit down on my computer, I have a problem. I'm not doing the branded search anymore. Best SEO agency. That's not really it. How do I drive more inbound leads? Okay, what channels do I do? Which one's the best? And then I get to some recommendations about maybe Shiro shows up there or not, depending on the niche, because it gets very specific in that conversation.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that, I think when you and I first started talking about this, part of me was thinking, okay, because of the AI layer that's now in place, does that diminish the importance of the website? But I think actually it increases the importance because you have to have very, very high quality websites which are designed to answer questions. It's more conversational and less about kind of just keyword hacking, which is kind of the old way of doing SEO. The underlying data that's getting fed to the AIs is still the website.
Yes.
Like that's not going away, but it is disintermediating the search results a little bit. But the content is not just still important, but it's more important. Yeah, the trust of it, obviously the quality of it, the timeliness of it, but it also has to be designed now for the AI rather than kind of like the Google crawlers and stuff. So it's changed. I think it's actually increased the importance. Like, how are you guys dealing with, advising customers around the structure of the website or what you're building?
The SERP, the search engine results page, is a mess anyway by Google. But now that now customers are dealing with the AI snippet on top. If you're a direct company, you want to be recommended a company, that's a little bit easier to rank for because it's traditional SEO. How's your content? How's your backlinks? It's even more primitive from our point of view because it's trained on Google, right? So it's trained on original SERPs keywords. And then for backlinking, it's referencing the top 12 backlinks, the SERPs. So companies that rank in the top 12, those are what are the most important backlinks for AI. So these listicles or LA Times puts out something with a very high domain authority, list of best companies that do it so and so. It's probably going to get in there. The other thing that we always recommend, and this is true for general SEO, and now the term is GEO or AISO, generative engine optimization or AI search optimization. What's really important here is just uniqueness of content.
Sure.
And so if the model's trained and you're the only one there, well, Google will recommend it, but the AI will recommend it. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know if you've seen any changes in your world, but you're right. That consumer behavior is totally different. Just that chat prompt.
Yeah, the consumer behavior is changing. And one of the things that I don't fully grasp yet is how much of the way my behavior has changed is how the rest of the world's behavior has changed.
Because you're an early adopter?
Yeah, because part of me feels like this is like the late 90s with the internet, where you're like, everybody's using the internet, like, but they weren't, right? I feel like at that time, and
I think a CTO say, "Hey, has like teenage sex. Everybody's talking about it. Everyone says they're doing it, but the reality,
We're roughly the same age. We
Yeah.
probably remember like the late 90s where, you were online, like things
Yeah.
were happening.
Yeah.
Like there was jobs there. You
Mhm.
felt like it was everywhere,
Mhm.
but businesses weren't there. They weren't really there.
Mhm.
Maybe they were saying they were there. I think you probably see that with AI. I know where we're working right now.
Mhm.
We're at that point where we are not just saying it, but we're adopting it.
Right.
Right. Which is still early, very early stages, but we're a technology company. There are a lot of companies out there who maybe talk about it, but they're not really using it. It hasn't really changed their business
Mhm.
yet. And I think that's, to me, it feels like it's everywhere. It feels like it's changed how I interact with
Yes.
the web, how I get information, not just on a daily basis, but on an hourly basis, like how connected we are to it. But that's got to be the exception, right? So it feels like this is the right time to be making those changes and talk about it. But where we were in the late 90s when it came to the adoption of the internet 10 years later, by like the early 2000s, it was everybody had changed how stuff was. And I think that's kind of where we are now with AI. So I think it's clearly it's changing early adopters like us, how we do with things. But, it's probably moving faster than it was, 30 years ago. But it probably needs another few years until it really comes out. I don't know. What do you think? What are you seeing outside of technology space?
Well, so we get a lot of leads from people who found us through AI,
Really?
which is great.
Yeah.
But they're worried about showing up themselves for AI. So that's how they find us. But Google still has 97% market share, which is amazing. They even lost 3% or 2.5%. That's kind of amazing.
That is amazing.
But the majority of search is still happening on Google. Just the fact that Google's worried about it and they're adding the snippets is what's making everybody a little nervous. So for us, it's still EEAT, experience, trustworthiness. It's always that we just are encouraging, if everything's derivative, if everything's AI for content, you got to put that originality back into it and be a little bit. So anyway, back to your question, Google's still the big dog, but will Google change the way they?
And then how do they layer in Gemini?
Gemini's awesome, by the way.
Well, we were talking about this earlier, and I think there's a good segue. Like, if Gemini is sitting on top of the search results, great. Everybody, I mean, it's useful. It performs like a ChatGPT or a Grok or whatever, where you're getting the answer to your question. But if your question is like, where do I buy something or where do I find something? Now it's Google's bread and butter about test.
Okay.
So what we were talking about is I'm primarily using either Grok or ChatGPT, and I use both. Grok's been interesting since it had a big update a couple weeks ago. So kind of
licensed therapist mode
is funny. And actually, the ChatGPT voice conversation was hugely helpful. But that's a separate topic. But using those two and only interacting with Gemini when you're doing a search, it opened up that question that would be particularly relevant for you, your customers, and your audience, which is if Gemini is sitting there and the AI layer is giving you the answer, how does Google reinsert the monetization side of advertisers?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's going to happen because Facebook's the only one really monetized. Was that Llama? Llama's really the only one, and they're using it to serve up the algorithm and ads, right? It makes total sense. ChatGPT has subscription,
right?
They're definitely not making money. But what are the other Perplexity?
They're not monetizing. They're not ad supported.
No. So what's going to happen there?
I don't know. Well, I kind of think I don't like saying this, but it kind of feels like how streaming services worked, 5-10 years ago, where everybody was sick of cable. And they were like, well, I'm not going to use cable. I'm going to cut the cord, which is kind of like what we've done with search. Like, I don't want to search anymore. I'm just going to ask the ChatGPT. And I'm willing to pay for that. So the idea was, okay, I don't want to see the ads on Google. The search results, don't help me. So I'm going to go right to like a ChatGPT, and I'm willing to pay for it because it provides this great functionality. Kind of like when we cut the cord, you're like, okay, I'm going to pay for Hulu. I'm going to pay for Netflix because I don't want to watch the ads anymore. It just feels like it's ad supported, or it's not ad supported, subscription based now, willing to pay for it. I'd pay for it. When are they going to inject ads into our AI experiences? Google's going to have to, because that's their bread and butter, right? I mean, there's no way Gemini does not take ad money somehow.
Somehow they do it on the SERP.
got to do it, right? But then how does that expand into like a Grok where Twitter or X is ad supported? But if I'm paying for it, do I get rid of the ads? Do the ads start to impact Grok's responses? Does it start to impact ChatGPT? Do they start taking, I don't know.
We have these political ideologies now within the models themselves. Like Grok, the mission is ultimate truth seeking. I mean, that's it. They just completely compromised if they start adding ads that isn't truth seeking anymore.
Right. Like somebody's going to do like a mental, to justify it. Somebody's going to figure out why it's
Yes.
not against our mission, but it's going to be there. And I mean, honestly, side tangent, but we were working with Facebook in the very early days of Facebook and how they turned the news feed into an ad-supported newsfeed. So, and this is like actually there's a parallel here. If you remember in the early days of Facebook, when you went to your newsfeed, it was everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was just the chronological feed.
Mm-hmm.
And when you were
just like LinkedIn now.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
When you're just connected to your friends and family, you could read the newsfeed. And if you remember reading Facebook, 10 or more years ago, you could read all of it and you would get to the bottom. It was like, I read everything. There's nothing new here. Well, then you started to connect to other like pages, and then they started to inject ads. And what happened was it created too much stuff. So then Facebook had to curate the news feed, which is where you got the algorithms from, and all the problems with the algorithms and the bubbles and everything. But the reason why they created it was to monetize the news feed to show you the content that you found most engaging. And that was a combination of posts from your friends and family, pages you liked, but then also the ads that you interacted with the most. So the introduction of the ads and the Facebook algorithm changed what you saw because it created too much stuff. So they had to curate it, and the ads did that. So I wonder, as we start engaging more with AI results, as they try to monetize those, how will advertisers, those algorithms, which is what you were just saying about like Grok or X being, okay, we have a mission and here how to do this, but we might change it because advertisers are spending.
Yeah.
We're going to have to, right. So how do we keep this thing going if a subscription model doesn't work? And I don't know, does that, we went from Google. Clearly, the major source of revenue for Google is ads. Facebook the same way. And those companies both have AI.
And YouTube, if you put that in.
So those companies that have major AI platforms, their core revenue is not coming from the revenue they're making for charging for subscriptions for Gemini or for whatever. It's coming from the ads. So the core business model of Google and Facebook is ad supported. X the same way. So that's there. OpenAI, no. Right. So you have these competing AI platforms whose parent companies, their bread and butter is advertising. So do you create this new technology that it can't undermine? You're not going to have enough subscriptions coming in to somehow displace the ad revenue that's coming in. So it's going to have to be influenced by it.
I mean, ChatGPT has its search console now too. They put out in beta, right? So they're thinking of it.
I said, and I don't know this, you might know this, but are they profitable?
No, I mean, just the amount of investment they're doing. I mean, DeepSeek changed a lot in terms of what the CapEx will be, but
that's this whole dilemma. This directly relates to what you guys are doing at Sure Oak, is that the way you advertise, whether it's online, whether it's organic, or whether it's paid, somehow that's got to seep into the AIs.
Yeah. Okay, so changing topics just a little bit. Like, we talk a lot about the three main use cases in marketing. Seems to be the generative layer for, content. The second would be the automation layer, which I probably wouldn't ask about. The last would be like the data layer.
Sure.
Those are where things are happening. When we talk about automation, you talked about your experience in your past company with agents. After fiction right now in agents, where are we with agents? And maybe explain to the audience what an agent is now or what it's supposed to do in the future for it.
I think you can take that a lot of different directions. I think the way we were talking about before is essentially, do you have some type of an assistant that is helping you perform a task?
Right. So this automation layer, yes, absolutely.
And the automation layers right now, they're kind of limited. I don't think they've broken out yet. And we were talking about OpenAI Operator, which starts to break out of the kind of the chat layer and gets it into the browser to the rest of the applications. I haven't seen it being used, kind of outside the walls of the chat interface yet.
Yes.
What are you guys seeing?
Well, just customer success. Support's been very successful.
Okay.
But in terms of, it's freaking me out, but taking over a computer.
Right. I think from an agency's perspective, we are starting to get to the point where you can use an AI agent to help automate those tasks, whether it's kind of analyzing data. We've definitely seen that in an agency setting. And I was telling you before about my previous startup. We were doing a lot of that same type of monitoring PPC campaigns, monitoring websites, monitoring spend, monitoring anomalies. We were doing all that through standard kind of programmatic algorithms, right? Basic type stuff, basic in the sense that we have AI, alerts, thresholding, things like that. But we didn't have the toolbox that exists now. So there are companies that are doing that now. A lot of them are built into the standard kind of ad platforms, whether it's built into a HubSpot or an SEMrush or some of those applications that exist. So I think those things do exist. It helps automate the tedious monitoring tasks. Obviously, there's agents that I'm sure you guys are experienced with around helping just generating copyright and things like that. And you can do that right out of the box.
Yeah.
How do you think those type of tools are either kind of, where's the line between creating like better, because it definitely helps with better content. We've all used it that way, to creating like too much content and it becomes like bad content on the web. Like, how do you guys think about that?
Oh, wow. That's a great question.
It's like too much, because now that I can do it, I can create a lot of bad stuff quickly.
Oh, yeah. So true. I mean, so if the model's trained on the internet, and if the internet's average, it's going to give you average results. It's all derivative. Where we focus is, think of Instagram, that blue check mark.
Yep.
Like, that's a real influencer. That's a real person. That's who I want from. So we're pushing a lot on authority. So if you write a blog, who is it written by? Is the point of view original? Is there an author's page that's linked to? So we put the author at the top and then the references on the bottom of what you're citing to. I think just this point of footnoting your term paper and who it's written by. If Google wants AI to be user friendly, it wants to bring the human into the conversation. Sure. So we think those things will be rewarded. I don't want AI's point of view on digital marketing. I want Michael's.
Right.
And so I think that will be important for now, until has it already surpassed human intellect? Right, a single
than the average person for sure.
Right. So it's small. So let's say it's smarter than the smartest person on earth right now. With the part where it becomes is smarter than all humanity put together, then that's where my human content probably is less important. We're definitely not there.
We're not there, but it does seem
crazy how fast we're getting.
It does seem pretty fast. It's really only been like 3 years. I think it's been 3 years since ChatGPT really
It's crazy to think about.
started. And I remember I think it was like November 2022, maybe 2021.
I don't know the dates, but
because I remember
it's actually shocking to hear you say this.
It was one of those things where we had a bunch of people over to my house for holiday dinner, and had friends, family. I had about 30 people at the house. And the topic of the night was, have you tried this ChatGPT thing? And I remember explaining it not just to my parents and things like that, who obviously had no idea what but even to like friends and family. They're like, oh yeah, I think I heard about this. And we're like, the whole dinner for an entire evening was people talking about that. Yeah. And I think that was only it was like 3 years ago, really. So yeah, it's happened incredibly fast. But to your point about, in individual topics, certain AI agents are smarter than obviously the average person. But when does it get to the point where the AI agent is smarter in everything than anyone on any topic?
Yeah,
it's pretty damn close.
Yeah, that's what we talk. Like, so if SEO is out of business, then we're not going to be the only ones. Everyone's out of business. The government has to universal. It's very existential, but
that existential question about SEO and SEM is there is a lot of ad dollars that are there. They're going to have to find somewhere else to go. They're just not going to not be spent. It's going to have to find an alternative place to do it. And if it's somehow not hacking, but Google and Facebook being the primary two drivers are going to have to figure out how to continue to accept those dollars and have them have an influence. And I think that's what everybody's learning right now.
Us right now, it's again, it's not a huge part of the market, but it's on everyone's mind. So if we do move to this total agent scenario,
Right.
well, how do I make my website agent-like or friendly to any inbound agents shopping on behalf of their customers? So if I have my own individual computer, totally autonomous, going out and searching for an SEO firm, basically like putting out an RFP, well, my website needs to answer everything from customer quality, experience, my authority on the space, how many clients, like it goes way deeper.
Yeah.
Preparing my website to talk to agents.
It's going to be way conversational. The queries are less about keywords and more about the input is going to be more kind of questions rather than just keywords, which is the standard way to do it. I think websites are going to have to adapt to that. And the irony here is, and this I've ran across this a bunch, is you'll actually be using AI to help you create the content for those websites so that it's better understood by the AI agents that are coming to it. And at that point, you kind of go, wow, like, you're this whole kind of who's talking to who. You're like, you're using the same AI to make the content for another AI to consume. And how do you create it better than we would have before? The things that are reading the website are better than the people were before. It's a bit of like a circular kind of where are we going to go with it?
Yeah.
But that's there.
Yeah. But back to your point on like what's changed in consumer behavior, what I think a lot what we're seeing, this is like traditional long tail keyword. Like, hey, how specialized can you get? And I think AI is forcing that even more with these conversational keywords. So let's say the traditional SEO agency, I can't chase the whole world anymore. I'm very specific to healthcare, insurance, fintech, and that has been more interesting. So that's not only the focus of my content, but it's been the focus of my execution too. I've had to change the firm to be like, this is who we serve because this is who we're writing towards, and this is who we have the best track record with. Is that the cycle's on itself? So
So what do you guys like? What are you recommending to customers? How are you guys figuring out? Segue to that. Going back to our analogy about the kind of late 90s when the internet was coming, also very similar to kind of the thousands when people were moving to cloud computing, like major changes. I feel like we're at one of those inflection points where when you're working with customers, it's like hey, this is happening. We need to change how you're doing. Like, what do you guys?
Well, so it hasn't changed so dramatically from traditional SEO to yet, right? That's this. I don't know. It's just much different, right? But for now, it's EEAT. So, for now, but like put an N in front of it, new, or put a niche, or keeping it as focused as possible. So, like if someone's coming in, very specific conversational, long form keywords, you've got to come up in that conversation in a very unique way. So that's what we're recommending.
Is the long tail keywords like changing at all, or is it still?
I mean, it used to be like best SEO agency. Best SEO, long tail was like best SEO agency for fintech. Now it's like I don't know what that actual conversational keyword would be, but as part of an earlier conversation is I'm a fintech company.
Are there AI tools that are helping with kind of keyword suggestions, things like that?
Oh, they're ubiquitous now. So Sengbusch has them, Ahrefs has them. We always are looking at what are the next AI tools, but we're seeing the bigger companies make investments. And so it's whether we thought we'd have to make purchase to put it in our stack, but it's just appearing in our stack.
And then a lot of those major ad platforms, whether it's Google or Facebook being the two bigger ones, they have their own AI built into their own kind of ad manager platforms where they're doing a lot of AI stuff to help kind of part of how you do ad optimizations, things like that. Like that stuff's getting built in, which is great. It's helping.
I'm most excited about
in general or related to marketing?
No, AI marketing.
No, I think with AI and marketing and digital marketing, what I'm interested about, I don't know if it's exciting. I guess I'm excited about it. Is how do they take those AI layers, and is the interface still, because this is how I consume it, right? It's going to be like ChatGPT on the phone. It's Gemini at the top of the results. Grok, very similar to ChatGPT in terms of how we interface with it. I think it went from kind of text-based, right? 2-3 years ago, very text-based. That evolution, very quickly went to voice, which is where it's at now. And you can use, I mean, I'm sure not everybody's using the voice functionality. Not exactly. That's a, well, so that's a great, really great example of kind of like what I'm excited about is the informational stuff is it can be voiced very well. The voice that's in ChatGPT or Grok is what Alexa should have been doing 2 or 3 years ago. Alexa's been out for 10 years. Can you believe that?
What is happening? Why is that moved? Yeah.
We talk about this all the time because we have, do you guys have Alexa devices?
Yes. She's listening right now.
Right. And she's still kind of stupid. And the fact that she cannot provide a ChatGPT like chat interface, voice interface is amazing. So, but to your point about what I'm excited about, it is very informational right now. It's not commercial yet. I think it's going to have to be because I think people do want to move that way. When you have like an Alexa that's ubiquitous, when you have a microphone on your phone that's ubiquitous, that's a very natural way to interact. So somehow that's going to have to get monetized for advertisers. I don't know how. That's something that I think I'd be very interested in. Does it go from voice to video? Does it get more multimodal? Where we started with AI was just text-based, right? So 3 years ago, think of how fast it's moved. 3 years ago, it was purely text-based. You input something, you get a result. You input something, you get a result. Then it turned into, it can cite its sources and drive you to other links, and maybe there's some visual components. Within a year, you got AI image generation, pretty good. We're at like AI video generation, which is getting better. There's that multimodal is going to have to happen at some point.
Yeah.
Because we experience AI through text. We do it through voice. There's a browser component, which there is some visual stuff, but those haven't all come together. Seems like that's got to be pretty close. Are you guys using the image generation for stuff for websites?
Derivatives. I mean, WordPress has plugins.
Sure.
And also, what's the Canva is fairly interesting.
Kids are using Canva.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's so easy.
Really cool stuff. I'm a OCD PowerPoint kind of person. And the kids use that at school, but they've been using Canva. And my son showed me some of the stuff that he was making for classwork. I'm like, this is really nice.
Yeah.
How'd you do this? He's like, there's an AI button there.
Yeah, it really changes. It puts the polish, especially.
Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing is like, in your view, I haven't seen this, but all the copywriters that are going to be out of a job. It's definitely been disruptive, but I see copywriters still pretty busy. Same thing maybe for creatives, designers. It's definitely changed, but.
Yeah, I'll tell you a couple stories from my current work. We do a lot of I run a big product team, and there's a very large training and documentation. And I told the woman who runs that team, she's amazing. I said, look, this was like last year. I was like, figure out how to do this faster.
Yeah.
Because this stuff's coming. Because you've got a lot of people who are writing documentation.
Yeah.
And it's like,
do
this faster.
Yeah.
Like, be on top of it. So I'd imagine kind of copywriters being very similar to that. You just don't need the bodies to do it. You need somebody who knows how to use it. But as far as the hands-on keyboard, I think you're going to have somebody who holds the AI accountable. Because that's the other thing. We hadn't touched on that yet. That's a really
hallucinations.
The hallucinations, and that ties into the copywriting.
Plagiarism, yeah.
Right. If you're going to use AI to do website copy, ad copy, whatever it might be.
So huge.
You can train somebody who understands how to get what you want, but you're going to have, it's not going to be fully automated because somebody's going to have to sanity check that when it comes back. Because if you don't, it's going to bring things that are wrong, which sound good.
Yeah.
And that does happen. I think I remember when I really started getting into some of the AI stuff and people would talk about the hallucinations. Two things. It's hallucinations and kind of people pleasing. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, totally. It wants to say yes.
It wants to say yes. And you need to, if you're going to move to use AI to generate copy or to generate any type of content, if you're not sanity checking it and riding it like shotgun, you're going to get burned.
Totally.
And I've seen it. Like I've seen it things where you ask it for an answer, you ask it like if this is correct, and it wants to tell you you're correct. And then sometimes I've looked at stuff and I go, that's wrong.
Yeah.
And then you go back to it and you go, I think that's wrong. And it goes, you're right. It is wrong. And it's like, okay, good. So there's a bunch of that stuff where, I think people do need to be careful about how they use it. You're going to be able to automate a lot of stuff. But if you take your eye off it, I think people are going to get burned.
Yeah, we're recommending. We just did this for sure, but we have an AI, ethical and uses policy now. So,
Very good.
so like always a human on top of the AI, always a spot check. But if you're going fast, like if you write copy in ChatGPT, check it against Grok at least as your first check. And there are tools for plagiarism for sure. That is table stakes at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's going to exist for a while where, there's kind of that trust factor.
Mhm.
Kind of like trust but verify. Like,
Mhm.
we're using AI to do ad optimization. We're using AI to do content generation or copywriting it, but we are trusting that it helps us go faster and be more efficient for your customers. It's great, but also we're verifying
Yeah.
that it makes sense because I think it does make a lot of mistakes.
Great customers, they're asking us if you use AI. I think maybe originally there was skepticism. Now it's like they want it. It's required.
I think they're going to want it. And I think this is true for all industries, but they're going to expect that you're using it because if for some reason you're not, they're going to feel like they're not getting the most efficient kind of use of their dollars. In your case, their whether it's their ad spend or whether it's the fees or whatever it is. If you're supporting that with a lot of humans and you haven't adopted it, it's going to send the signal to a customer that these guys are not the most efficient stewards of our dollars. I think you have to do that. But that idea of, and I always think about like this, if you're going to lean on an AI to help with those things, nothing about AI says this is a perfect intelligence. Right. And people are like, oh, it makes mistakes or it had this wrong. And it was like, yeah, but no one said, like, Sam Altman was not out there saying this is like the perfect intelligence.
It's like Tesla's like, we're not going to have car wrecks.
Right. It's like, yeah, Elon's not out there saying like, we'll never make a mistake because it's an AI. Like, I think of it as like any other thing that you trust or person. It could help. If you find it helpful, you're going to keep going to that person. If that person makes too many mistakes, you're going to fire that person.
Yes.
If that person lies to you or causes a problem, you're going to have to be on top of that. You're going to course correct. And as long as people don't expect AI to be perfect, you're okay.
Yes.
It's the people who look at it and go, well, there was some assumption that it was supposed to be perfect. It's not. It's just a really smart thing.
Yeah. You have a whole generation that is so used to automation that they just blow through that editor step. That's really interesting. All right. So we're kind of coming up on our time. Any AI tools that, outside the models maybe that you can't live without at this point? You'd recommend?
No, but I'll say we kind of tied to what we were talking about before. I really hope the next version of Alexa gets better. She's bad.
Yeah.
Right. But I want that kind of functionality. I feel like she's got the reach, but just not the brains on how to do it. So I think when you start seeing things like that work better, voice search, other things I'm excited about, Operator gets you outside the chat window and starts to allow people to create agents that can use your computer, can use your browser, can use your data sets. That's still very new. I haven't experimented with a lot. I think it's on the premium tier of OpenAI. I think that's I think that's when you can start automating a lot of the daily tasks, which, ChatGPT or Gemini can't automate tasks for you. It can answer questions very well. It's great. It can generate content really well and copy, very well. You can obviously do the images or some video stuff, but it can't do tasks for you yet. But I think Operator starts to do that. That's, I think, probably that next wave of how we use.
Yeah, it's just we didn't really even get into data analysis, but the idea that we can actionable automation around our data.
Right. I don't want to take the data, because the way it is right now is you basically take the data and you're going to paste it into a ChatGPT. I want ChatGPT or something like it just to be able to look at it, and not just within the data, but also be able to connect it to a task I'm doing in the browser or something that I'm doing in a document. It hasn't done that kind of cross-application stuff yet, and I think everybody's probably understandably a little bit nervous about, does it kind of break out of the constraints that it's in.
Yeah.
That's how we get Skynet. And
so many things just popped in my mind around that, just around channels and channel fatigue and real human content rising. But I'll save it for two of this. I hope you come back.
Definitely.
So thanks so much for your time.
Thanks.